everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. My name is Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner-operator of Something Wicked Entertainment Events, and welcome to this podcast that we try to delve deep into many different types of horror films that have graced the film arts in the last 100 years or so. We haven't gone back nearly as far as the 1920s and 10s with any of our films. And the film we're going to be discussing today has barely left the 2000s. So, but if you've been listening and following us, you know that we've been trying to delve deep into a lot of the different subgenres of horror, as well as the many different decades. And we're going to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. So please make sure to like, subscribe, and do that thing you do with podcasts so you never miss an episode. Now, getting into the film we're going to be discussing today, which is past the years 2000, so it's a more modern day film, which we don't do too often, but we try and throw those in every once in a while. Is we're going to be doing the film The Skeleton Key from 2005. And to discuss The Skeleton Key with me today, I have Ryan Panazzo and Sarah Panazzo. We want to thank these two for joining us today for this discussion. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And for everyone out there, just so you know, Sarah is one of our regular guests, so I'll probably be referring to her as Panazzo, whereas Ryan, I will just call Ryan, because he only comes on our podcast to discuss mostly action films. So it's going to be really interesting to ask him why he decided to join us for The Skeleton Key.
You know, Kevin, I can answer that in 2 words. Kate Hudson.
So I'm going to be a little guilty in this. That's one of the reasons why I saw the film is why. Because it had Kate Hudson in it. And the sad thing is that for me, this was the time when she was really, really popular, but then she drifted off to go do nothing but romantic films. And then she kind of disappeared through the ether of all the other type of actresses that looked very similar, who were blondes, and which is very sad because I loved her in Almost Famous. So, boom. So Panazzo, Sarah, what was kind of your reaction to this film? Why did you see this?
I saw it because it was a horror movie. You pervs.
Sometimes we watch horror films just because of the people who are in them.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sometimes. But no, I only watched this for the first time this year. Or 2024, whatever year we're in.
2025?
Yeah, we're now in 2025. I watched it in 2024. And I was like, okay, I remember seeing like the ads for this. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm interested. And so we finally watched it. And I was like, it's really good up to a certain point, and then I was like, okay.
I've always thought this was, when I saw this 20 years ago now, it's really strange to be talking about this movie that was released in 2005, and it's now been 20 years since this movie came out. And it's really odd to me because I didn't really think it was that old. And I did see this when it came out in theaters, and I was like out of college. So for me, 20 years ago doesn't seem that long ago. But for a lot of audiences who are listening to this podcast, 20 years is a long time ago. And you guys, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I know now, Panazzo, you hadn't seen it but a year ago, maybe not even that long ago. So it's kind of weird discussing the film because it is, for those who have seen the movie, there are certain aspects of it that probably would not actually play well with audiences today. But when this movie came out, it was really popular and it was really a successful film.
Yeah, and I think that's why I didn't like it at that certain point, because it is a very interesting take. You've got a lot of voodoo versus hoodoo, which we don't get a lot of anymore. I think the most other recent one would be Hatchet, that you would say more is like voodoo hoodoo. And so this really plays well with that part of history. It all takes place in Louisiana, which is really cool. But yeah, that part we're watching it last year definitely doesn't play well with modern audiences. I could tell you that.
Well, Ryan, when did you see it? Did you just see it last year with Sarah, or did you watch it years ago?
This was a Blockbuster rental back in the day. Yeah, my brother got it and had his friends over, and I was the little brother tagging along, and I watched it, and I liked it. I thought it was really good even back then, because it's when you think of in terms of horror movies, um, I remember Jaws messed me up, Birds messed me up, even Jurassic Park caught me. But this isn't that quote unquote scary. It deals a little bit more supernatural, so it has that horror element there. But even back then, I was what, oh 05. I was math. I don't know. I couldn't drive yet. Oh yeah, so but I was right at the age. Kate Hudson was in it.
So for me, that the whole thing about the early 2000s is we got a lot of these suspense and thriller films that were kind of designed to go for general audiences, and that's how this film plays for me. One of the reasons being is that we got a lot of American remakes of Japanese films. So when The Ring came out, and I think we had What Lies Beneath, and a bunch of the Shudder, and a bunch of those came out around the same time. They weren't really films that were for horror fans, but they were more for general audiences. So they didn't really go very deep in any type of gore. They were more for suspense and thriller aspects, because there's a lot of jump scares in this movie. I forgot about that. There's a lot of those in this.
It's not as spooky as some others. It's very suspenseful and trying to solve the mystery of what is going on. But yeah, you get those couple of jump scares throughout that leave you thinking there's something else going on.
And that's why I brought up The Ring, because the mystery aspect is very, very central to the plot of the movie. Like The Ring, she has to, like this movie, she has to figure out a mystery that drives the whole film. And I think that's probably why I loved it so much when it originally came out, is because I was a huge fan of The Ring and Ringu. I actually seen Ringu before I actually saw The Ring, and a lot of the other Japanese films of that time. I actually saw the original versions versus the American remakes. But I love that aspect of those films, because I had gotten tired of the watered down slasher movies that were coming out during the 90s. So this type of movie was a breath of fresh air, despite the fact it wasn't for the gore fan in me. This was a breath of fresh air. And so you guys seeing it just last year, you didn't have that whole that atmosphere, that background. You kind of said, it seems kind of old now. 20 years. It's only 20 years old. It's kind of old.
And it's not that it's old, but times have changed. Like, you can't make certain movies anymore, and this is definitely one of those where the entire ending of the movie would be different today.
Yes.
Like I said, going into the hoodoo voodoo stuff, it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. Nobody does it anymore, which is really disappointing. But yeah, it makes you learn a little bit more about that kind of culture, and it plays with you throughout the movie to try and figure out exactly what is going on.
So you bring up a very good point in regards to the whole culture, and making this a film that takes place in Louisiana is actually a key to why the film, in my opinion, is successful, because of all of the great cinematography and the usage of the actual plantation that they're at. And then, of course, the swamps that they're at, and then like the little gas station, all these little bits, or even the nightclub scenes, because that shows a different aspect of the exact same state and area. And there is a mention between Jill and Kate Hudson's character, Caroline, where she's only an hour away. That's it. You go from modern day nightclubs to like the deep swamps where everybody believes in hoodoo.
Yeah. And I mean, that's everywhere down there too. I mean, she's literally in the middle of New Orleans. And I mean, there's stuff everywhere down there. The cemeteries, the ghosts, all of it. There's hoodoo shops everywhere. And yeah, I mean, it's also interesting how it plays on characters, because she is super white, obviously not from this area at all, and knows nothing about any of this.
Characters from New Jersey, right?
I think so.
I think it was New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, or the Bronx or something like that. And then throughout the movie, you find out that all of these other people who are from the area are very superstitious.
Mm-hmm.
And she's always questioning, well, is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Or is it really just a spiritual issue is going on? So it toys with you a little bit as to what is real and what is not.
I think that works because with her character, and when we first see Caroline, she's actually with a patient in the hospice who actually does die, and then she realizes when she's taking out the person's stuff that the family doesn't want anything to do with them, and then she has to throw it away. But she doesn't like the fact that that's what happens to some of these people who die in the hospice. So it's very depressing at the very beginning because she feels that way. And of course, you see her driving to the interview before she gets a job, and she's kept a trinket from the guy who died as kind of like a memento of the fact that she doesn't want to be, that she wants to care for these older people who are on the verge of dying, which makes her character a little bit more tragic when you realize what happens to her at the end. But it sets up her to be a very caring person because essentially you have John Hurt. Is it John Hurt?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I was trying to not get them mixed up with the other Hurt. But you have him who is almost completely doesn't say anything for most of the whole movie.
Yeah,
which has to be hard.
Yeah, he's a stroke victim, so he's basically paralyzed on both sides, can't speak, can't do anything for himself. But yeah, you see this logic and reason of science being a nurse and taking care of somebody versus, okay, well, how much of this is spiritual? So it's an interesting turn of everything going on in the movie. There's a lot of, like we said, the sleuthing when it comes to her and Luke, who is like their real estate lawyer and just trying to get everything together. And
my darling, he's an attorney at law.
Sure, that one, whatever. But yeah, I mean, and then you learn more about the South in general, just with everything that goes on. There's some traditions you have to keep and just different things that add up or don't add up throughout the movie.
Yeah. Which is one of the things why the twist works for me is because Caroline thinks what's going on is one thing, but there's something even deeper going on below that, which makes her story much more compelling to watch and more tragic when you figure out what happens to her at the very end.
The whole story as a whole is quite tragic and horrific. If you really think about it. And there is so much more deep exploration you can do into characters who aren't even in this movie that they talk about that leaves you wanting more, but I don't know how much more you could tell.
Well, one of the interesting things, because you bring this up, is the picture that she first finds, which is of the two, I don't even know what you call them, with the two kids. What are the two black characters supposed to be exactly? They're former, because it was the 20s, I believe. So what was it?
So I don't think I think they're more servants than slaves. They never outrightly say.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely were known in the area for doing some kind of.
It was the 20s. There was this little dust up back in the 1860s that ended slavery. Okay, so they were servants.
So, well, I'm thinking because of the way that they are in the flashback scenes where they look like they're all dressed up, they may have been something to do with like bootleggers and everything like that during that time period. That they had a business that was successful, because you got to remember, from all intents purposes, the house belonged to them, and that's a big freaking house.
Yeah, I think they said that the family themselves were bankers. They were part of the bank.
They did say, didn't they?
Yeah, they do mention it briefly, but yeah, there's the whole party with everything. So they've got the servants watching over the kids and everything else, and it just kind of all goes to shit.
Well, keep in mind, it does go to shit, but you get that sense that there's a rich history and the backstory that we don't see all of it. And they try and explain a lot of it, but like we're talking about it now, and some of it's very, very vague, which makes the very ending of the film, when you get a lot of information all at once, interesting and different at this time. I mean, the most I think we get is from the fact that when Caroline takes Luke back to the gas station and there's the old lady and she mentions the song that she's hearing and Justify, the old lady is terrified of what Caroline is asking about.
Mhm.
She shouldn't be asking about stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so obviously there's rumors and there's history of who these people were,
Mhm.
and what their version of witchcraft can and cannot provide.
Yeah. Because if you don't believe in it, it can't hurt you, which is repeated multiple times through the movie.
Which I think is also interesting when they talk about all of the other hospice nurses they bring in who are like, nope, I know the area. I'm getting the fuck out of Dodge.
Yeah.
So they have to bring in Kate Hudson, and she's just ignorant enough to the customs that she doesn't piece together what it is.
Yep. Which is also interesting because as much as she likes to claim she doesn't believe in any of that, one of the big plot points is that she slowly believes it because she thinks that it's part of what John Hurt's character, which I can't remember, Ben. She believes that Ben believes it, so therefore she has to find a way to solve the problem by believing in it as well, even though she says she doesn't believe in it. That whole type of thinking is interesting and could be confusing to a lot of people until you realize the twist at the end. So,
yeah.
Getting to that, was it Gina Rollins, who I forgot she was in this movie. Shit. I was like, oh wow, this had a really good cast. But 20 years ago, I was like, I had forgotten all of this because you don't normally see Gina Rollins in this. And other than Alien, I don't know John Hurt being in many horror films.
Yeah, I think they said this was Gina Rollins' only horror film. And John Hurt, I feel like he did another one or two horror films, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, he was in that one TV series that was horrifying.
Which one?
Doctor Who.
Oh. I thought you were a Doctor Who fan.
Nope.
I can't say much. I haven't watched Doctor Who since the Tom Baker days, so I'm really far behind.
Love my wife to death. She's tried for how long we've been together? 13 years, and I can't do it. I just can't. I'm sorry.
But I mean, even Peter Sarsgaard in this, like he does a great job of being a character again.
Peter Sarsgaard. He's pops up in movies every now and then. Would I say he's like a blockbuster A-lister? No. Is he a solid, like, this is going to be a good movie because he's in it? Yes. And he always understands the assignment. He's an amazing character actor. He shows up, nails it, and then leaves with a paycheck.
Well, I kind of remember when this came out that they were trying to make him into something he wasn't really. Sort of like Kate Hudson, but, she drifted into mostly romantic type of films. And those... And I think those two pairing in this movie is probably one of the big drawing points when they originally came out. Whereas Gina Rollins, who I knew of, and John Hurt, who I knew of, were like good character actors or older actors that they're sticking in this movie for.
The selling point definitely was Kate Hudson and Peter Sarsgaard back then, because I remember like that was around the same time that like Jessica Alba was in a bunch of horror films because it got people to see it. I mean, like you had Halle Berry doing Gothica. It was just a bunch of like famous people and throw them into horror movies, even though they've never done a horror movie in their life.
And she didn't end up doing another one after this one, which is so sad.
It is.
But what did you think about John Hurt and Gina Rollins in this film?
I love John Hurt. I think he does a fantastic job in everything he does, and I know he was really excited about this. He was like, for once I can sit and do nothing and get paid.
He didn't do anything. He didn't. He said maybe 2 sentences.
Yeah,
that
but
were
I mean,
incomplete,
everything
but he acted
that he
every
could
scene
do.
he was in.
I mean, the looks with his eyes and doing that minimalistic acting that you can only do, just phenomenal.
That's funny because I still think of him. I always bring up, I love him in Alien, But what really always piques my interest and puts a little giggle in me is the scene in Spaceballs where he recreates that scene from Alien at the very end. So
Not again.
But no, I love John Hurt. He's a great actor. He's fantastic in just about everything he does. I don't think I've seen him in anything that I would consider he did a bad job on. Gina Rowlands, I wasn't too familiar with because I didn't watch a ton of her movies. And then I was like, oh, hey, she's the old lady in The Notebook. This is a really different movie.
Have you seen it?
Unfortunately.
I haven't.
I've never seen the Notebook either. I want to one day, one year.
If you like dramatic romance movies, that's for you, but that is definitely not what I'm
I need a
into.
good cry. I'm gonna drink some white wine and watch The Notebook.
There is nothing wrong with watching those type of movies every once in a while. Just like I say that because I don't want people to not watch horror films either. This is actually one of the better horror films if you don't like horror films.
Yes, it is definitely one of those
horror light.
It is a horror light. It's not too gruesome. I think there's just one scene that's a little over the top, and that's her nightmare, where she's like voodoo doll-esque.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only like gross part of the movie. Everything else is very light.
That's the scary images part of the PG-13 rating.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of those PG-13 movies at that time period decided to rely on a lot of those jump scares.
Yep.
Because it was not gore. It was not like The Ring is a very effective movie because you have those flashy images that come in. They're not necessarily jump scares, but they're off-putting.
Yeah, and they because like with Ringu, like I remember watching that the first time, and the way the speed that the movie hits the first time you see the face with the eyeball rolled into the back of the head is terrifying. And then you pause it and you're like, this is a ridiculous face. This is so freaking funny. And yeah, I mean, you get some decent jump scares here with like doors slamming and other things, but it's not crazy scary.
Well, no,
I mean, I don't even think there's any like alligators or crocodiles, and they're in a swamp.
There are no crocodiles in Louisiana, honey.
You know, they could have easily thrown the crocodile into the swamp where she's rowing from the house.
Exactly.
Luke.
They could have, but they don't. Okay.
Get it right, God.
What?
You keep saying crocodile. The only American crocodiles there are in the Everglades.
Yeah, alligator. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Alligators and bull sharks.
Bull sharks. Thank you for the animal update. And
hey, you're welcome.
Because I always forget that too.
my autism is sharks and alligators. I'm sorry.
Well, there's more alligator killing movies than there are crocodile killing movies.
That's true.
So I can tell the difference between them, but I forget.
Because the crocodiles are unionized and they don't want to pay them dues.
Oh, other big part of this movie, so we can get away from crocodiles.
Yes.
Mirrors are a huge part of this movie, and like I know we've done like Oculus and everything else where like mirrors are essentially part of like the soul and viewing the other side. So the lack of mirrors in this movie, except for the giant climax, is really creepy.
It is creepy, and I thank you for bringing it up because it's really effective and it plays towards the story. I think, and because the very first time is when Caroline notices there's no mirrors up. And then, of course, she finds all the mirrors, but she doesn't know why they're up in the attic or whatever the hell they're calling that whole room up there. It looks like there's a room within a room in an attic, which I guess because it's a huge fucking house, you'd have that anyway. So, and then, of course, when the Violet sees that she's brought down the mirrors and she told her not to, she has this whole little tirade for a few moments. Which they have to keep bringing it up because when you get to the very end, what is done with the mirrors is really creative.
Yes.
I don't want to reveal the actual twist in the movie, but by the mirrors showing Caroline's character, everything is kind of happening to her in a very flashy moment. It's actually really well done. It's suspenseful. It kind of moves the film at a very fast pace, and then of course, the mirror shatters, which turns the whole film on end. But I'm not going to tell people what is going to happen because you need to watch the film. This is a film in which if we tell you what happens, the twist at the end, then you probably won't want to watch it.
Part of this destination is the journey.
Yes. It's like the purpose of the game is to figure out the purpose of the game. I don't know how many times you've watched that movie, but once you know the purpose of the game, I haven't bothered to go back to watch the movie The Game.
Right.
And we don't want that to happen to anyone out there who has not seen The Skeleton Key.
But it also works on rewatches because there's a lot of comments made throughout the movie that you pick up on then on your second watch that it's like, okay, this makes a lot more sense.
There's also some great conversations between the Luke character and the Violet character and the looks they give each other that because I obviously I didn't notice any of this stuff 20 years ago, but having rewatched it and knowing the trick at the end, I'm paying more attention to all the characters and I'm like, this is very fucking creative. I just didn't think about it 20 years ago because I didn't know the trick.
Yeah, there's so many little throwaway lines, whether it's having to do with the flowers in the yard or between people. I still think one of my favorite lines in this movie is, "My child, I believe you broke my legs." And she says it's so calm. And I'm just like, okay.
I think Gina Rowlands had I'm hoping she had a blast making this film because it's so different from everything she's known for. And the other thing is that a lot of the older actors out there who have had such a profound effect on the industry and the culture that is the film arts in itself, this is allowing these two actors to actually do something they're not known for and to stretch their talents and show that they can do more than just the old people in movies. Even John Hurt, he's a strong actor who is trying to play down as an invalid stroke victim for most of the movie until, of course, he's not drugged anymore and he tries to escape. So scenes like that are kind of the burst of energy that I'm sure makes for a very compelling role to play, because even though John Hurt, as you say, wanted to do a film where he just got to sit there most of the time, he still brings it for all of those facial expressions, and especially with scenes between him and Violet. Especially. So yes. I'm trying to think of more stuff we can talk about the film without talking about the ending of the film. It's one of those things where we're so trying to avoid touching upon stuff like that.
Well, I was going to say, you keep referencing The Ring, and this director, Ian Softly, didn't do much directing-wise, but the writer of this, Aaron Kruger...
Yeah, Aaron Kruger.
Ended up doing a ton of stuff. He's also like an award-nominated writer now for Top Gun Maverick. But he did Scream 3, The Ring 1 and 2, Brothers Grimm, 3 of the Transformers movies.
The good ones.
Ghost in
Are there any good ones?
Yeah, it was Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon, and Age of Extinction.
Never mind, he didn't do the good ones.
Okay, so never mind. I don't know. Dumbo, Top Gun Maverick, and then he's got F1 coming out shortly too. But he's known for writing some pretty good movies, like some pretty decent movies. And then, like you said, The Ring, there's a lot of similarities between that and this, especially with the general story of it being more detective work into the horror aspect.
Yeah. Now I think about it, that is probably something I just didn't know about until now, and I didn't think about it. So.
I'm sure the mic picked that up. We need to talk about that. Where was it? That Pretty Plantation that was filmed?
The
Felicity Plantation
in St. James's Parish in Louisiana.
And it was pretty.
It was gorgeous. Apparently, the whole swamp is not real. That's all CGI'd in and at a different location. Yeah, it is surrounded by like fields.
Okay.
Because it was
a plantation.
I think it was I saw exactly which one. I think it was sugarcane.
Okay.
In particular, so it's surrounded by fields. It's not really surrounded by water, so they had to put the water in there.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I was looking, it's done a couple of other smaller movies and TV shows, but the other main thing that it's known for is 12 Years a Slave. So it is very famous. They do a lot of stuff there still, lots of tours, still offering to film stuff like that. But yeah, it's a gorgeous location.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said earlier, the location is key to this film.
Really is, because it adds that little bit of creepiness at the same time, because it's supposed to be in a swamp, and being in a swamp is naturally creepy in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and when you're dealing with hoodoo, which is very Louisiana and probably Mississippi based, in those other really far southern states like that, we don't see a lot of them. And you mentioned the other great one that we have a lot of it in, which is the Hatchet series. But you're right, there's not much. Very like Angel Heart, and I can't think of anything else that would even delve deep into that.
Yeah, like occasionally you get a random voodoo doll in a movie, but you don't really get anything fully based around it. I think American Horror Story Coven did a bit of it with that group of the witches versus I forgot what her name, Angela Bassett's character, where she's leading like the whole other group locally. But yeah, there's not a lot other than Disney's The Princess and the Frog.
Oh God! Well, we did get probably a little bit of it in Candyman: Farewell to the Flesh.
But you got to reach for that one.
And the thing is, when it comes to these type of films, voodoo, which also delves into zombies, the voodoo zombies type, and them trying to differentiate between voodoo and hoodoo, because in this film they make you aware that there is a difference, because it's a common mistake to believe that they're both the same. And so I do think a lot of people do just mix them all together, which is unfortunate. But I think we need films like this to give people a clearer definition of the differences between the two. This one makes it very clear that for it to be effective, you have to believe in it. And
yeah, which is terrifying at the same time, because like you don't have to believe in anything you don't want to, but as soon as you do start believing is when it can become positive but also dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, because especially towards the end of this film, where Caroline starts using what she's learned as a means that she thinks is she's saving or protecting people and herself, which unfortunately for her has mixed results. Oh my God! So without delving any more into what the trick of the movie is there anything else you'd like to say about Skeleton? Either one of you.
It's definitely a spooky set. Like I said, the swamp and like older Gothic style setting is definitely creepy. There's a lot of nice like dark night shots.
Yep.
Especially with the like the figures that are in the house that I think are supposed to be like saints or something. In the dark, they look like people. So you get a lot of creepy shots that way. There's a lot of foreboding throughout the evening shots, and just the general mystery of it is really good.
What about you, Ryan?
You know, you guys were talking about it earlier, how they did this world building of things that happened 50, 60 years before the events of the movie, right? Not every movie does that right. You know, you look at like Game of Thrones, where they talk about Robert's Rebellion, and they do this great job of world building and telling the story without showing a single second of it. I don't think they show a single second of the past of this movie, right? The events that led up to this movie. But they do a really good job at explaining who the characters were, their motivations, and they don't have a second screen time. So for a mid-aughts jump scare horror movie, this was actually like a banger. On a rewatch, it's like, damn, this was pretty good. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kate Hudson, oh my God, but they did a really good job at the world building and the storytelling in this. And John Hurt does a great impersonation of a hot dog in a wheelchair. and Peter Sarsgaard's got that Southern accent, and Gina Rollins put on a big hat and had a great time. You know, it's a solid movie.
Yeah,
it gets a solid B+ from me.
Well, I think one of the great things about how effective this movie is the fact that Aaron Kruger kind of got to start doing some horror films.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. I didn't think about this when he did The Ring, that when you take some of the aspects that really worked well in The Ring, and then he kind of put them in this film, and it makes it makes this film a much richer film. I don't know if he originated this film or not, because like Scream 3, he took Kevin Williamson's original story and wrote the script, because obviously Kevin Williamson was busy, so he couldn't write Scream 3. I can't remember if he originated this or if it was
I think he did originate this. There's no other writers listed or anything else like that associated with this. Because I know, he's done a lot of like screenplay adaptations and such. So I know he's been a little all over between original stories and this. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that this is a strong beginning for him of where he's going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he worked on Transformers movies, so he ended up going to like mega billion-buck franchises.
Yeah, and I mean, to the point that he got Ghost in Shell, which is or isn't whatever you want it to be. But then Top Gun Maverick and F1. I mean, I grew up watching Brothers Grimm nonstop. I loved that movie. So I mean, he's got some strong movies. They're not like Oscar nominated everything, but he's written some strong movies.
Yeah, and like we said before, this movie was successful when it originally came out. But it's one of those films that is successful, but then you kind of forget about it. 20 years later, I had completely forgotten about it till you guys wanted to talk about it. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. Obviously, Panasa, you hadn't seen it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a good 20 years since I'd seen this movie. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there now who are going to be listening to this episode and saying the same thing. They haven't seen this movie in years. Mm-hmm. It had some in name only sequels, which had nothing to do with this, and they are god awful. You need to, they're god awful.
Then I won't ask.
No,
you do not involve Kate Hudson, so there's not worth watching.
I'm out.
No, I think the studio sold the name to Skeleton Key, and some other filmmaker went out there and made these god awful sequels, 2 of them. But I think that doesn't leave a bad taste about this film, really, because this film, I think, other than the fact that, once you know the ending, it kind of doesn't lend itself to a rewatch unless you want to dig deeper into the whole mythology behind it. And of course, we're questionable about whether or not this film would be made today. It'd probably end a lot differently, but
yes,
those are kind of the things I kind of take back from this film. Did we get both of yours? Your last thoughts of the film, Ryan? Did we get yours? Okay. So I do think this is a film that does warrant watching, because it is one of the better 2000s/aughts films of that whole early 2000. It showed what was capable of horror films at that time and what audiences were looking for, because we were at a time coming out of the bad 90s, the end of the 90s, bad 90s.
Bad.
And audiences were like craving for something, not just horror fans, but general audiences, because these type of movies, The Ring, this one, were all successful, not only because of horror fans, but because of general audiences. And so it's good to go back and look at some of these, because nowadays what we're seeing is extreme gore films like Terrifier 3, which are playing towards general audiences as well as horror fans.
Yeah.
It still boggles my mind that movie made as much as it did, because on a unrated release, and still was successful, which is unheard of. But that's what people want now.
I mean, let alone the fact that kids are lining up to take pictures with Art the Clown as Santa. I mean, I know we talked about this the other day, Kevin, about how gruesome stuff can be and how it was like game changing back then, and now it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's normal. It's normal. And now it's really hard for a PG-13 horror movie to get noticed, if at all made.
Yeah.
Yes.
You could get borderline movies that are PG, that are borderline R movies that feel like PG-13 that will be successful. I kind of come up with, I can't remember what Talk to Me was rated, but that movie right there was like, that could have been a PG-13 movie. But that was extremely successful. Well, also because it was Australia? No, that's Australian. Also, that's just different because it's a different culture. I think we Americans want to see different cultures more now. We want to see different things that we haven't been inundated with for the last 20 years. So something like Talk to Me is very cool and different, and we see other people. I think that's where we're heading, because Terrifier 3 is really different and surprisingly popular because it's a clown. Most people like clowns. We used to be terrified of clowns, and now they're popular again. I'm like, what the hell happened?
They forgot about them hiding in the trees.
I was about to bring that up. Why was that a thing?
I don't know, but people forgot about it, and now we're okay with clowns again.
Yeah, we're all good. But, Stephen King's It, two of the most successful Stephen King adaptations ever now.
Yes.
Clowns. Clowns were like, you didn't make movies about clowns. People don't like clowns.
They're clowns from outer space. I mean, clowns were not good things.
And now we have Clowns in the Cornfield coming out this year.
Yep.
Clowns. Oh shit. All right, so those are my final words on this movie. I do want to get you guys' ratings for it, because for everyone out there, we now rate the movies that we talk about from 1 to 5, being 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. Where on the spectrum would this fall for you, Ryan?
Like a 4.2.
No, I'm not going to question it. He said a 4.2. Okay.
Yeah, I do decimals. It's like I said, great acting, great story. You could tell they enjoyed it. It wasn't like a tense play, tense work. Apocalypse Now, it was not. Is it a sign of the times in the mid-aughts? Yes, but watching this in 2025, it was a good movie. It was a good movie. If you want to watch something you haven't seen, turn this on, sit back, and relax. It's not a bad movie.
Okay. What about you, Panazzo?
I'm going to go with a 2. It is not one of my favorites. It's one of those, if he turns it on, I'll watch it with him, but I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it again. It's still got some good writing. It's got some good acting, but it's not one of my favorites.
It's been 20 years since I saw it. So, even though I thought it was a great movie in 2005, because I thought it was clever. This is before Get Out. This is before a lot of things it had that whole cultural hoodoo thing going for it, and it had Kate Hudson going for it. But it also had Gina Rowlands and John Hurt. When I saw this, I knew all of these actors. I knew who all of they were. Peter Skarsgård. I knew them all. I didn't know who the director was, which is a selling point for me back then. I used to be able to just name directors off and go see horror films based on them. But back then, I was questionable because I was still under the impression I loved horror movies that were rated R. This was PG-13, so I had to have that extra selling point. I do believe that it is a strong film for the aughts. It is a really strong film that holds up well, except for the fact that some people may think that the ending is a little bit outdated or something you couldn't get away with today. Now, that being said, I also think it'd be hard to get away with something like Dogma. Kevin Smith's Dogma in this day and age today.
Yeah.
And I still think that's a brilliant fucking movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes when we look at these films in the prism of when they were made, it's good to come back to that, because there are films that were not only instrumental to the culture of the time, but in order to appreciate some of these films, you have to go back to when it was made. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead is a profound film, and it was made in 1968. It would be a completely different film now.
Yes.
As we have seen in the 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead, where it took different themes than the original one there. I think that this film is very similar to that. I think if you take it in the prism of when it was made in 2005, the aughts, it is a really effective film. It gave audiences something they had never seen before, and the ending is part of that. You would never have seen that in a film back then. It was like, wow, that's some wow. It just wouldn't fit with audiences today. So you'd have to go back then to kind of appreciate it. I give the film a 3.5 stars. It got a higher rating for me in 2005. Now, that being said, a lot of shit has come out since 2005, which is why my has gone down a little bit more. And Ian Softly, as director, is not a director I kind of go out and look for his films. Yeah. If this was like Wes Craven, John Carpenter, or somebody, it'd probably be much higher on the scale because I was like, oh yeah, this is a great introduction film to him and all that type of thing. So I would love that. But 3.5 stars for me. And I did decimals 2, Ryan. I just didn't go to the weird 0.2. With that, I want to thank you both, Sarah and Ryan, for joining me on Conversations in Horror. It's been very interesting talking about The Skeleton Key with you from the 2005. For everyone out there, I hope this gives you a clear image of the types of movies that were made in the 2000s, the aughts, however you want to describe it, because they were profoundly different than what we are getting today. But you need to go back and appreciate some of these films that came back before. Not only from 20 years ago, but something like George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which is, 60 years old now. These are films that they've had a profound effect on the genre, and you should go back and watch them. Not only to appreciate when they were made, but to appreciate the profound effect they've had on people now. So with that, I would like you all to go to your favorite podcast app, like, subscribe, follow, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast, because we're going to have some amazing podcasts coming up, talking about some great films for the whole year 2025. Make sure to check out previous episodes of Conversations in Horror, and we want to all wish you a pleasant day from everyone here at Something Wicked Entertainment. Have a great day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.